Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Shaboque. Come on in. I've got a new project to show you. On today's episode, I'm finally replacing one of our two fences that separate the front yard to the backyard. This has been a long time coming, and I can't wait to show you guys what we did. This is going to be one of my longer episodes. This one took quite a while to put together. So, before we get started, you guys know what to do. Go grab your favorite beverage and even a snack too. Sit back, relax, and let's get started. All right, let's get this show on the road. We've went ahead and painted an orange line on the ground where we're going to start digging. Now, it's time to put all those skills I learned as a kid for digging to good use. Except now I'm old and it hurts a lot when I wake up in the morning afterward. We started this project later in the summer, and fortunately we had no rain leading up to it. That left the ground hard as a rock. Even more fun to try to dig through. Oh well, no time to complain. We've got a bunch of digging to do. My neighbor Roy saw all the fun I was having, and he decided that he wanted to help. The house right next to ours on this side of the property sold to a new couple, and this was quite the welcome to the neighborhood present. We're gonna tear up the yard right next to your house. Oh well, gotta break them in somehow, don't I? The plan is to dig this area about 6 inches down, get it as level as possible, and then I'm going to have to dig 4 vertical holes for the posts for the fence. 2 posts are going to be 6x6s and 2 are going to be 4x4s. These are going to have to be some seriously big holes because I don't want this fence going anywhere. That's the problem with all these fences everybody builds. They skimp out on the back-breaking effort, and then the fences look like garbage after a couple of years. They start leaning, falling sideways, and in general just look terrible. I'm going to do my best not to let that happen. Going to break out the level and try to get this generally as flat and straight as possible. After the majority of the digging was complete, this is what it looked like from above. Each hole was roughly 3 feet deep and about 10 to 12 inches around. Up next, it's time to bring in the gravel. This is going to lay a bed down for the concrete that's going to be poured on top. Great job with backing up there, Richard. But before that happens, we've got a lot more work to do. First off, we're going to throw a little bit of rock into the larger holes and get the 6x6s all mocked up. But before I show you that, there's something else we need to handle. Alright guys, here's the doors right here. You can see we're reusing some doors that were probably originally on a post office back in the day, and we're going to turn those into our front gate doors. We mocked it up so that we have the 2 posts here, the doors in the center. There's going to be a header board and also on the top a little bit of an awning there. So what we're going to first do is we're going to figure out our spacing between the doors, how they're going to come together, build a frame around it, and that way when I go to set the posts I can put the frame between them and know exactly where these 2 posts need to be set. So, that's the plan. Let's get it done. So the director informed me one day that we're going to go pick up some doors. We went and dug them out of somebody's backyard, and I asked them, what are they going to be for? She told me they're going to be our new gates. I said, okay. Have I ever did anything like this before? Absolutely not. Am I up for the challenge? You betcha. So after I mocked up the frame, I went around marking off where all of the hinges are going to be, and then headed into my shop to break out my router. I'm going to go around these door frames here and cut out the grooves where the hinges can lay in there nice and flush with the frame. I set up a quick little jig on my workbench here. That way it'll make it really easy to rip through these as quick as possible. There we go. Nice little spot for one hinge. Time to do it 5 more times. I'm not going to bore you guys with doing the other side, but you can imagine it was exactly the same thing. Let's go ahead and get this frame assembled now. The 2x4 in the middle and the bottom are going to be temporary, but that'll allow this frame to keep its shape while it gets put into position. And just like that, my little door frame is complete. Now it's time to lift the 6x6s and get them into position so that frame can be fit in between them. That way it'll keep everything in position while we pour the concrete. Hopefully. We're using some 6x6 treated pine that are 12 foot long. The fence isn't going to actually be 12 foot tall, but I wanted to make sure that I had some extra length so that once the concrete was poured and the frame was put in, I could cut them back down to where they're exactly level. Now I'm going to fit that frame in there between the 6x6s and get everything nice and aligned and level and clamped up, and that way we'll know exactly where those doors are going to go. In order to keep these 6x6s from wobbling all over, I get out one of my handy dandy tie down straps and strap them together, which will hold them nicely into place temporarily. I love me some tie down straps, they are so handy. Next up is running levels all around this to get everything as straight as possible, because once that concrete goes in, it's game over. Here's what it looked like after this thing was as level as it's gonna get. Look at that ugly fence back there. It's not gonna be long before that thing is gone forever. I have been itching to get rid of this fence ever since we bought this house. One thing I did to the bottom of every post is paint on some of this asphalt coating in order to hopefully prolong these posts in the ground as long as possible. You can see in the background the 6x6s were already done at an earlier time. Alright, with that out of the way, we can finally start the layout for the concrete pad. The director came out to give me a hand because this was no easy process. We're using these flexible concrete forms that we've used in other projects and they work quite well, especially when you're wanting to add some curves and angles to concrete. We're adding just a little bit of a slope to encourage the water to run off of it. One of the goals in putting the concrete down is making sure that the doors will never collide into anything that will keep them from opening. When we first moved in here, the back gate couldn't even open because dirt had been pushed up against it and the previous owners never dug it out. That was a problem that we are going to fix for good. Roy, our friendly neighborhood supervisor, enjoyed watching the process. The plan is that it's going to take 2 days to pour this entire concrete pad, so I'm putting in a divider to allow that to happen. I'm getting rid of just a little bit more dirt here, and then we can start putting the rock in. Alright, here we go. Time for the rock. This is roughly about 1,500 pounds of rock on my trailer. Next up is a steel mesh to hold all that concrete together. After all those times I go and tell everybody safety first when it comes to an angle grinder, I have absolutely zero protection on for these cuts. Real bad. Remember kids, do as I say, not as I do. Next up, I'm putting in what they call a chair, and this holds up the pieces of steel so it positions them more in the middle of the concrete than down at the bottom. We went forever during the summer without a drop of rain. 2 days before we're going to pour concrete, rains like cats and dogs. Ends up filling up every hole of our dig completely to the top. The bad part was I already had the concrete mixer rented and all of the concrete moved outside. So we had to pump all of the water out of there and still make this happen. Never fails, right? Oof, watch your head there, honey. And with that, it is time to get the cement party started. Each of these concrete bags are 60 pounds, but man, I swear they feel like 100, especially when you have to go through about 50 of them. There's a little bit of water left at the bottom of each of these posts, so we tried to dump in a bunch of dry concrete in there and mix it in and try to make the best of it. The director, as tough as she is, found out these bags are really heavy. She got a stern talking to not to do that again. Not because I care about the concrete, but so she doesn't get hurt. It's pretty crazy how quickly this machine tears through a bag of concrete. I was probably having to throw another bag in every 30 to 45 seconds. If you watched our last video where we built the concrete steps, this machine was not super efficient for that process. On the other hand, if you're pouring a lot of concrete in a short period of time, this machine does amazing. If we had to use a traditional concrete mixer for this pour, I think I would have given up. It's starting to fill up pretty good now. Time to start beginning the process of getting this all nice and flat. Needed to cut off the tops of all these little stakes so it would make the screeding process a lot easier. Once that was done, we could start running a 2x4 over the top of everything and getting it all nice and level. director actually handled a lot of this process and did a really nice job with the finish. We let it sit overnight and then removed the center divider. We were unfortunately on a time crunch to get this machine back because we only had it rented for 3 days, so we had to get to pouring again. My back wasn't happy about that, but what are you gonna do? The nice part was the director realized that we didn't have to stop the machine every time I needed to load another bag of concrete in. For today's pour, I was able to keep throwing bags on while the machine ran, and it made this pour go way faster than the prior day. Also, we didn't have the extra layer of supervision, so that felt like it streamlined the process as well. I unfortunately miscalculated the amount of concrete they were gonna need, and so I bought way too much. The bad part was, that means I had to preload this all back into the truck and return it to the store. Whoopsie. The director once again used her magic touch and finished the top of this concrete. And here was the result the next day. I have to say I think we did pretty good for it being the largest concrete pour either of us have ever done. Since there was so much moisture in the ground and it had turned quite cool, I let this sit for a week before taking the forms off. Hey, not bad. After that, I was ready to fill all the dirt back in around the edges. We left all that limestone rock down to help encourage the water to wick away from the concrete. With that, we've got our posts up, a concrete pad poured, and it's time to start building. First up on the agenda of building is cutting off the tops of those 6x6s. Before I do that though, I gotta figure out where to cut them. I'm going to go ahead and put the header board up there and see where everything's going to land. Then I can mark the 6x6s, break out my circular saw, and get to cutting. Unfortunately, even though this is considered a 6-inch circular saw, that doesn't mean it'll cut to the depth of 6 inches. So to finish the cut, I whip out my handy handsaw and chop those tops right off. Rinse and repeat on the opposite side. those tops gone, I can get to work on the header board. First off, I'm going to cut out of the header board where the door frame is going to fit up against it. To give the header board a bit of a more fancy feel, I'm going to notch out the 6x6s so the header board will fit flush inside there. I'm using my multi-tool to clean this cut up. And here goes the first attempt at fitting the header board. You can now see where the door frame fits inside those notches I put inside the header board. I needed to clean up these cuts a little bit so the header board fits better and is also as level as possible. There we go, that's a good fit. To secure the header board to the 6x6s, I'm going to be drilling 1/2-inch holes and then attach it using some threaded bolts. The only drill bit that I had available to make this hole was a little bit on the long side. That's okay though because it worked quite well. I'm going to go ahead and slide the threaded bolt in to keep everything aligned for drilling the other 3 holes. With that fully secured, I can start framing the fence. These horizontal boards are going to hold the slats of the fence nice and secure. And here's what it looks like with all of the boards on. Now I can begin the process of attaching each slat. We decided to buy 8-foot tall fence slats here so that our front fence is much taller and harder to peek over. I have to cut roughly about 6 to 8 inches off each of them in order to not hit the soffit on our roof. And now for the reveal of the long-awaited surprise, the location of that stained glass welcome sign. Look at how the sunlight comes through there. Isn't that pretty? I need to have the sign sitting here temporarily so I can fit the slats around it. Tell there was a pretty dramatic change in the weather based on my clothing. Winter is coming. One of the things that I wanted to make sure of is that my screws were as level as possible on this fence. My neighbor Roy actually shared this trick with me. He recently helped with a new build across the street put up a fence, and they shared the trick with him. Essentially, you tie a string to the very first screw that you put into the first slat, pull it nice and straight, keeping it level, mark your holes, and that way, every single one of them is nice and level. It worked great. I'm definitely sticking that one in my back pocket for another time. The slat that goes around the welcome sign requires a special cut. Good job there, Vanna White. check out this perfect fit. FYI, that took me at least 3, maybe 4 attempts to get that cut right. Hey, the magic of video editing. Anyways, back to getting the slats up. Before I could add these last slats that were going to meet up to the house, I need to contour the ground a little bit. I want the bottom of the slats to have a nice curve to them, so it required doing a little bit of landscaping. With that done, I can get the rest of these boards on. Here comes the last one for this side. One of the things that bothered me while I was putting these slats up was how uneven every board was. So I decided to fix that little problem. I ran every one of the slats through my table saw, trimming both sides off and making everything as square as possible. That way they would fit together tighter and just look neater overall. I wish I had done it for the first ones, but that's how it goes sometimes. And here's a quick look of the front with all the slats on. It's almost starting to resemble a fence. Time to work on the other side of the fence now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment too. So I'm going to be attaching into the existing fence, and so I need to get some of these old slats out of the way. Now I can install the new supports connecting the old fence to the new fence. Next up, I need to transition from the 8-foot tall slats back down to the 6-foot tall. In order to do that, I'm going to sister in a 4x4 to the existing one. That way I don't have to dig a hole and concrete it to the ground. I'm using some 6-inch long lag bolts to hold them together. Now I can put in that top support that'll allow me to attach those longer slats. I'm going to go ahead and reinforce this corner here with some extra 2x4s. That way I can make the slats meet up nice and neat. To build that corner, I need to see how the two sides are going to transition, attach the one slat to the fence, and then custom cut the other one to meet right up against it. Oh yeah, look how nice that came together. Now I can get this side all finished up. Here we go, last slat on the exterior. As I was finishing up, I I noticed all the birds starting to do their southerly migration. I was just really hoping they weren't going to all poop on my new fence. Pretty cool, huh? Alright, we have finally arrived at the big moment that everybody has been asking about. How are you going to install those doors as gates? Well, let me show you. Surprise, surprise, one of my favorite tools in the old toolbox, ratchet straps. My theory is, if I wrap these around the door like this, and one around like this to control it from going sideways, I should be able to ratchet the door up exactly into place. Yep, they're holding the weight just fine. Now I just need to ratchet it up just enough so those hinges pop right into those grooves that I cut in the door frame. And there it went. It is officially now being held up by the door frame. Okay, moment of truth. Let's see how it did. So far, so good. Let's see if it'll close. Whoops. Need to cut out that middle support. The door was running into it. Ta-da! Alright, one down, one to go. Same process this time, except I'm only going to use one ratchet strap. Up we go. Just like that, it drops right into place. Alright, that one seems to close pretty good too, but now what happens if we close both at the same time? Uh-oh. We've got a problem. I was hoping it was just this old hardware that was colliding into the other door, so I took everything off. Unfortunately, that did not fix the problem. So, after a whole bunch of staring and head scratching, I made the decision to cut the door. I popped it off the hinges and headed over to my sawhorses. Came a circular saw to make a very scary cut. I knew I only had one shot at this, and if I screwed it up, that was not going to be a fun conversation with the director. With the hinges back on, it's the big moment of truth. Oh, thank goodness. It actually fit. It probably fit just a little too well. The doors were still a little tight, but we're going to come back later and fix that up. I've got way more important matters to attend to. It's time to say goodbye to this fence.
Just kidding, Mom. I didn't actually say a bad word there. I definitely thought it, though. Look, I am absolutely over this old fence, and I couldn't wait to get rid of it. The cool part is you can start to see the reveal of a brand new fence behind it. Whoopsie. Got a little carried away with my kick there and it crashed into the bird feeder. Sorry, honey. Now to get rid of the last piece of this old fence. A post, cemented down into the ground. This thing was a much bigger pain than I anticipated. But I wanted it gone pretty badly, so I was willing to put in the work. Look at that thing, it still didn't want to give it up. One good poke of my digging bar, and finally had some success. Alright, time to say goodbye to this old fence for the last time. There it goes. Thank goodness. Now I'm going to pop all that concrete out of there. That was a lot of concrete they put in that one. And fill the hole back in. I figured it was time to pick things up since that old junky fence was finally gone. Cut this thing down to size so I could go fit it in the dumpster across the street. A few chops of the Sawzall later, that thing's ready to go. Back to those doors, I'm sanding the edges here to try to help it close just a little bit better. There we go. That's a little better. I'm still going to come back later and tweak on it some more to try to really dial it in. And here is a look at the current state of things. We're starting to finally get somewhere now. We were having a lot of wind this day. Terrible timing for it while I'm working on a fence, but that's how it goes. You can see the neighbor's trash can going down the street. I thought I'd do the nice thing and go get it, and about that moment, the wind caught my camera. No good deed goes unpunished, let me tell you. Alright, time to say goodbye to these 4x4 posts that were sticking up. Next up on the agenda, I needed to put a door stop in so these doors had a piece of wood to hit when they were closing. Next up, I came across a picture on the internet of how some people were putting a piece of wood on top of their fence as a bit of a cap, and I thought, hey, that's a good idea. So, I decided to build one myself. In order to do that, I needed to reinforce the top of the fence to give the wood something to sit on, and so I could screw it into that. Here is the cap that I was talking about. See the difference between the right and the left-hand side? I think it looks pretty cool. Now it's time to do the other side. And here comes the cap. And here's what it looks like with both caps completed. Alright, I think it's officially time to get rid of the old address on these doors because they now belong to us. Up next on the agenda, these old doors needed to have some new trim put in there that holds the glass in. The old one was rotted out pretty badly, and we were concerned about the glass falling out. A quick trip to Lowe's, I found some trim that'll work great, and thusly begins the gate remodel. One down, 3 to go. Back side all done. Let's go ahead and knock out the front side. And that completes the trim project. With that all done, I can now finally stain the fence. I'm going to be using the exact same stain that I used on my shop. I always think it's interesting how much it changes the look of something by putting some stain on it. You'll notice the doors over there have some white discoloration to them. That's because I've applied a coating of paint remover onto them. We'll deal with that a little bit more in just a few minutes. For now, let's get the rest of that stain on. back side all done, I can now switch around to the front side. Now, if you know me, you know that I can be very clumsy at times. Today was no different. I mean, of all the things that could happen, while I'm sitting there putting the final touches of stain on the fence, the brush slips right out of my hand and goes over the neighbor's fence. And if that wasn't bad enough, the new neighbor has a very friendly dog. Okay, I guess I gotta deal with this now, because I really need my brush back. So after looking at all my stuff to fix the problem, the post hole digger looked like the right tool for the job. Let me tell you, the moment that dog saw me reach that tool over the fence, he hightailed it out of there. Not so tough anymore, huh? Well, I wasn't going to waste any time. I got my brush out of there as quickly as I could. Success. I got it. Never fails. It just never fails. Alright, now I can finally put that final touch of stain on the fence. After a quick little power wash on the concrete to get off a little bit of the stain that got through, it was time to try to get a little bit of the paint off the doors. I scraped and I scraped. I actually applied 4 different coats of paint remover attempting to get all of this off there, and was mostly unsuccessful. I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board to figure out what to do here. You can see the 4 or 5 different colors of paint here that I talked about earlier. Well, it is what it is. Time to move on. I'll revisit this problem another time. Up next on the agenda is a little modeling by yours truly, where the welcome window's gonna finally go. Alright, enough of this nonsense. Let's get back to work. It's time to permanently put in the welcome window. And in typical shaboque fashion, it doesn't fit. That's okay. The multi-tool to the rescue. Quick little zip-zap on a couple of those pickets, and now the sign fits. A couple of careful little tappity taps with my rubber mallet, and it's time to secure the sign. This 2x4 didn't have any stain on it yet, so that's a little problem that I had to correct. With that done, I can finally put the last few screws into the sign. And although this fence is not completed yet, we have some more plans for it. It's time to bring this video to a close. So with that, I present to you the final result. It's quite the change from the old crusty fence that we had there before, and although some of my neighbors really questioned my sanity during this process, I've had a few of them come up to me and tell me how much they like my new fence. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this project. Until the next one, I'll see you guys later.